Okay,
It's going to happen.
Well, welcome to Who Versus. We're back
Episode
after
6002.
episode 6002.
We're back from a
unpublished.
break.
We are back. It's been 2 weeks. What did we have? Was it Christmas?
Something.
It was an event. We had a work thing to go
My
to.
wife had a baby.
Your wife? Congratulations.
Yeah.
Girl?
I don't know. I haven't met her. Yeah, it was another girl.
The girl.
It was a girl.
All right. So today we're versing a couple things. One, we are versing you were on a jury.
Yes.
You were on a jury.
I was on a jury. I
Which
was
is weird,
impaneled.
which is weird for you because you're usually on the opposite side of that one.
No, never.
And then
but, yeah.
we are going to be talking to an expert on homesteading.
Yes. Homestead movement.
Anna, Tiffany, got to help me. Sakawsky.
Yeah.
All right. Amazing person. And then a little later, we might have some fun with some Jordan Peterson impressions.
I don't think we're going to
We're not going to do it? We'll see if there's time.
Well, we might.
We'll see. All right.
Big
so,
news out of Hollywood.
Gene Hackman.
Gene Hackman passed
Gene
away.
Hackman died. Yeah.
Sad.
His final picture of like weeks before his death really shocked me.
Really.
But like to your point from
Was
earlier,
it a landscape?
he was
or what did he
95
take a
years
picture
old.
of?
No, he's just he's
You
emaciated.
see what I did?
He's emaciated. It was sad. It was sad. But anyway, your jury
Jury
duty.
duty.
So
My gosh.
you texted us in the morning and said I'm not coming into work today because I have to go jury duty.
I kept thinking that I was going to get the text, hey, don't bother. Don't show up. So it's Sunday night or whatever. Well, first of all, they don't text you Sunday night. They text you Friday night if the trial starts Monday or whatever. So I get there. It's forever away from my house. I don't know how big counties are normally. This is the biggest county geographically in America. Probably not true. But Fairfax County, Virginia, huge. Took me like 50 minutes to get there. And I got to be in there through security on the 5th floor reporting for duty at 8:15 in the morning.
Jeez.
That's a nightmare. Absolute nightmare. The court complex, judicial complex of Fairfax County is huge. It's the size of a college
And they're always
campus.
in really bad neighborhoods, right?
Well, this was out in the middle of I don't even know where I was.
Okay.
I was still in America. I didn't cross the river, so I was in Virginia, but it was huge, and it was the size of a college campus. I had to park forever away and walk up this hill. It was a nightmare, Phil. I had to walk.
Your heart
Man
can't
of
take
my
it.
age.
A man of your age,
So
your
anyway,
heart
I
can't take
show
it.
up there. I don't have my jury summons because I forgot that was important to bring. So that was a problem. Sit in this room. There's got to be 200 people in this room.
For one trial?
Probably a lot of trials, I'm thinking.
Okay.
So I think they just did a cattle call, and whoever shows up, they're
Well,
going
it's
to
the golden age of America.
start calling
we're
numbers.
tough on crime again.
So I'm sitting in there. I'm like, oh my gosh! I start reading the first names. They're like juror number 11, blah blah blah, whatever. They say the lady's name. I pick up my coat, and I go, I know I'm going to get called juror number 12. 12 jurors, I thought, out of this room of 300. Guarantee it's me. They go, juror number 12, Holland, James P. I'm like, it's my luck, man. I knew it was going to be me. Well, it turns out it wasn't just me. There was like 5 other trials. So a lot of people in there got called. But just for my trial, it was like 25, 26 people, right?
26 jurors?
Yeah, all in the room. Okay?
All on one jury?
For one. And like the first 13 or 12 sit in a box. I'm number 12.
Yeah.
And they basically like, if you get eliminated from the box and you're number like 7, they're like, number 13, you're up. They lose another one. Number 14, they start pulling from that other pile. And they end up with 12 or 13 in the box. They dismiss everybody else. They're gone. They're done.
They go home.
For 3 years.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's going to come out that I have a JD, a law degree, and I'm going to get out of this because no trial attorney wants a lawyer
because in a
back
jury,
in the deliberation room.
In a jury, a lawyer could whisper magic to people and sway them one way or another. Yeah.
Right? And like, you know too much, and you don't want an informed jury. Most people don't. Well, most lawyers do. But you don't want that. Oh, it's a civil trial, so it's not criminal. So they whittle this down to 7 jurors.
You can have a jury with 7 jurors?
There's nothing in the Constitution that says you have to have 12.
I just assumed it was 12 because
No.
of the movie.
Yeah. Most criminal cases probably is 12, but it's not necessary. Also, 12 and 7, odd number, even number,
Yeah.
weird. Or reverse that. So anyway, well, first of all, nobody speaks English in this whole jury pool. It's like me and 3 other guys are native English speakers. One guy gets up there. This guy's like, I can't. I won't do it.
You got close there. You got real
He's like,
close.
I can't really speak English. And the judge is like, what do you... First of all, don't you have to be a U.S. citizen to serve on a jury?
I would think so.
Or at least a green card, LPR.
I would assume you have to have some sort of legal status to be on a jury.
Nobody's a Native American speaker there. Not Native American, but like natural born English is the first language. So this guy's like, yeah, I don't really speak enough English. And the guy's like, well, what do you do? And he's like, I'm a waiter at a restaurant. He's
This
like,
is the judge saying
this is the judge saying this to the Chinese guy. He's like, I speak Cantonese. He's like, well, do you take orders in English? He's like, yeah. He's like, so you speak English? And he's like, yes, but I don't understand legal things. He's like, all right, I think you could really do this. But, you know, this is important and it matters a lot to both parties. So you're going to have a civics lesson. You're not going to be on the jury, but you're going to have to sit here for the entire time.
Oh, man. You just punked that guy out.
Yes, the guy's like fake. You know, he probably spoke English with better
English.
grammar than you and I. And he had to sit there for the entire time. This is so funny. So, yeah, it's a civil trial and car accident, classic thing. We get, the end up, so it's a white Caucasian male, probably on methamphetamines, is the plaintiff, suing Duc Phang or something, some super ancient Vietnamese lady. So the jury...
Wait, you're saying that in this case, the methed out guy was the good guy?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying he's the plaintiff.
He's the suing.
Yeah.
I guess
mean
that's
he's a
my
good
bias.
Guy.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't mean he's a good guy.
Right.
He's just a plaintiff suing Ngoc Duc Phang or something, this ancient Vietnamese lady.
Okay.
I assume Vietnamese. I don't actually know. Ancient Asian American lady who also speaks zero English. How do you represent yourself? She doesn't even take the stand because she doesn't speak English. Yeah. They read back her. They have a super old white guy sit in the witness box and read her statement as if he was her. That was with the defense's strategy. It's like, put the lady on who can't. Anyway, so that was one problem. The second problem was
she gave a statement, though.
She gave a statement in a deposition, but she didn't feel comfortable.
They couldn't translate that like in the moment.
I know. So anyway, white guy versus Asian American or American of Asian extraction, whatever the PC bull term is. The jury is 4 Asians, 3 white guys. Like, that's how they whittled it down.
That's a better breakdown than the OJ trial. So what was the facts of the case? Because I don't think anybody
I don't want to get into it.
You don't want to get into it?
No, I don't mind. It's just the guy was driving on a street legal dirt bike, so you know you're winning at life.
Yeah.
Right there. Street legal dirt bike.
That and the meth?
Woo. Coming up to an intersection. Oncoming traffic lane. This lady just turned left right in front of him. You know, you have to yield when you're turning left.
T-boned her.
Yeah, on a motorcycle because she was in his lane of travel. He has the right of way, of course. He hits that thing and just flew.
And I'm sure
they had 2 witnesses who were like, I didn't see the impact. I just saw him flying like Superman through the air.
And I'm sure this Evel Knievel wasn't wearing a helmet.
He was. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been there.
He would have been dead.
But it was hard to tell, like, my impression that he just had that meth face.
Yeah.
Giant gauged out ears. Skinny little guy, probably 90 pounds. Maybe 5'2".
Yeah.
He just looks like a methamphetamine guy. You know the look.
Wait, so the meth never
it
came up
could
in the
have
trial?
been that was all injuries sustained in the accident. The accident happened in June of 2021. It took 4.5 years.
What happened to a speedy trial?
Not in the civil case, brother.
Really?
Yeah. Nightmare.
So you don't know if he was a meth head. You're just making that assumption because he had gauges in his ears and he was super skinny.
So the point
Were
of
his
this
teeth
story
jacked
is,
up?
I didn't look at his teeth. Guy never smiled. He was terrible on the witness stand.
Oh, he went on the witness stand?
Oh, my gosh. He's the plaintiff. You're supposed to be sympathetic. He couldn't answer the most softball questions from his own attorney.
Like what? What's an example?
Just like, what happened? He goes, what happened? He's like, I was
smoking meth.
He could not answer like the most basic. He was the worst witness, I thought. The worst witness I had ever seen in my life. I was like, this guy should not win the case, even though from the facts, it's like he did nothing wrong. Well, he was not the worst witness. The defense called this witness, this random, like, blue-collar guy comes in. He's just, like, steaming mad for no reason.
Because he got called in on a work day to be on a trial.
I guess, but he immediately becomes, like, hostile with the plaintiff's attorney. He's like, well, you shouldn't even have been riding a motorcycle. Those things are dangerous. And the guy's like, objection. The judge is like, sustained, disregard that comment. That witness single-handedly blew the defense's case because he was such a jerk and clearly hated motorcyclists so badly that when we went to
And he was the defense's witness.
the defense's key witness, literally their only witness. And like we went into deliberation. And I thought, like, you know, I had my biases, right? So I was like, oh, the Asians are going to go with the Asians, and I'm expected to go for the white guy or whatever, right? No. We get in there, close the door. The Asian lady was like, well, their witness was terrible. He just hated motorcycles. I think we're done here. I was like, yes. So I think the point of all this is, one, jury duty is a civic duty. It's like voting in person. Like, it kind of sucks. You hate it. It's inconvenient, but it kind of maybe a little bit feels good doing it. But the real key takeaway is that none of my prejudices were confirmed.
About yourself and of others?
About myself and others. I was wrong in every instance.
So did you guys have like real thoughtful conversations in the deliberation room?
Yeah.
Or was it just like we're in and out in 5 minutes?
No. It was 35 to 40 because we elected a foreman. And he was just like overthinking everything. He was like a grad student, like a math guy, and he was overthinking anything. I was like, look, guys, trust me here. The definition of negligence is this. Proximate cause is this. Contributory negligence or comparative fault. I was like, Virginia's not a comparative fault state. If you guys say he has any fault, his case is over, dude. He receives nothing. And they're like, oh, really? I was like, yeah. If I had not been in there, and then they would have been like, well, it's 10% his fault, 90% his fault.
Without for you, that guy's getting the chair.
They would have death by strangulation. They would have strangled him to death that day.
Boy, it's
in the courtyard.
That's the kind of Virginia law you don't hear about anymore.
Look, the good thing is, and we got to get in our next guest, but the good thing is all my prejudices were not reinforced. It was shocking how wrong I was. That was a wake up.
That makes me like you a little less. That's kind
of. It was a wake up.
Yeah.
You just get into these modes, these stereotypes. These people are we're all gonna go with the people that look like us.
Right.
No, totally wrong. Think about the world we live and operate in. You just get so solidified in your like little bias or whatever. And it's not a hatred thing. Yeah. It's just like, oh, they're clearly on that team and I'm clearly on this team because we're used to thinking in a binary. Yeah. And it's good to be reminded, hey, jerk, white people are the devil. I don't know. You get what I'm saying. Speaking of white people.
Yeah. What's the whitest thing a person can do in 2025?
Start a homestead in Canada.
Start a homestead encampment. That's right.
No, Canada.
In Canada.
Yeah.
I don't think she lives in
Canada. I
Canada.
think she's Canadian. We're going to get
right to the bottom of it.
Read us in. Play us in.
Play the show? All right. We are very happy to welcome Anna Sakawsky. She's the former editor and publisher of Modern Homestead magazine. She is now with Homestead Living as an editor. According to her bio, she used to live in the city, but now she's sort of a mega homesteader, living on a quarter-acre property with her family. And according to here...
Quarter-acre? That's it?
Well, first off, what's your quarter-acre?
Oh, no, don't set me up as a mega homesteader.
No, the reason why I say that, sorry to derail this thing right away, is that... I live in like a tenth of an acre or something. Like my lot is in square feet, so not even an acreage. But like to be able to homestead on a small plot is particularly impressive.
That's what makes it all the more impressive.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a bad thing. It's a good
thing. According to her bio here, and this is what's going to blow your pants off, she produces and preserves hundreds of pounds of their own food every year. So we have a lot to learn there. And just based off of her bio and the things she's written, she's clearly got a heart for this and a real passion for teaching other people about homesteading on big and small scale. Anna, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So the reason that we reached out to you is one day I'm in my living room and I see this magazine in our house that my wife has a subscription to, and it is Homestead Living. And I'm leafing through it, and I thought it'd be a lot of fun for James and I to talk to you about your work and what you do, because on a very small scale, as James mentioned, we live in the burbs, and so we can't have the sort of agriculture and livestock that someone like you might have out there, and so we want to talk a little bit about that.
I feel like Phil doesn't know how big an acre is.
Acre's pretty big.
It's decently big.
Yeah.
A quarter acre is 25% of that. That's not
really
very big.
So quarter acre.
She's not running. Anna's not running cattle on your quarter acre.
No.
But chickens.
Yeah.
Well,
chicken.
here's the best part. Where we live in the suburbs, we could technically have a miniature cow,
What?
and we looked into it.
A miniature
A
cow?
miniature cow.
I didn't know they made those.
Yeah.
But okay, Anna, talk us through. So, well, oh boy, it's so much to go in. This is a topic Phil and I have hit on: preparedness and food storage and stuff like that. But how big is your family? How did you get into homesteading? And like, what percentage of food is produced by you and your family?
Okay. So if my family, we're fairly small. It's my husband and I. I've got an 8-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son. So as you said, we're on a quarter acre now. We have a large garden. We have a few backyard chickens. And so kind of and that's expanding all the time. And we can get into that and what that looks like. But like you said, we're not running cattle. We don't have, a lot of livestock because we just are not able to on a quarter acre. We have, a hazelnut tree, but we don't have like vast orchards or anything like that. So we're doing this on a fairly small scale,
Yeah.
but we are still able to produce like a fair amount in that small space.
Yeah.
And we haven't even maximized our property yet. We're continuing to expand. So, as far as what percentage, I can't say for sure. I'm not going to, lie and say that we are completely self-sufficient. We're far from it.
Yeah.
I talk a lot about, avoiding the grocery store or, becoming more food secure so that you're not dependent on the grocery store. Now, the reality is that we are still highly dependent on the grocery store. And even back to the days of, Little House on the Prairie, the original homesteaders, they were still reliant on, going to the market and getting the things that they couldn't, produce at home. And so
Yeah.
the idea of like true self-reliance is a bit of a myth.
Yeah.
And actually a lot of people in the homesteading community have now started talking a lot about community reliance.
Right.
And just on more like making connections with people within your local community, just so that because no one person can produce it all, no matter how much land you have. And so, what we do try to do is, as much as possible, what we can't produce here, we source locally. So,
Yeah.
we purchase, a quarter side of beef from a local farmer every year, and that's enough for our family. We did a side of pork this year from a local farmer. Vegetables and fruits and whatever that we're not producing ourselves, we buy them in season locally, or some, we produce enough to eat fresh, but we don't do enough to preserve for the whole year. So that kind of stuff we will try to source locally and then preserve it to last throughout the year. So we still do depend on the grocery store, especially at this time,
Sure.
and for things that you can't get locally. But as much as possible, we're either producing it ourselves or we're sourcing it locally and then preserving it to last the year, and then we restock that following year.
That's really cool. I I I sort of agree with you. Actually, I completely agree with you that like the myth that someone is like hand to mouth foraging for food and they literally never step foot in a grocery store is like
No.
it's got to be a myth, right? It's not easy. I like what you said about community. Phil's a big believer in community. I am not. No, I am. But Phil's always talking to,
Yeah.
hey, if I can help my neighbors out and build that resiliency. And I think that's sort of the point you're hitting on is that like, we're not going to get 100% self-reliant and never go to a grocery store, but it's about doing a few things. And this is what I tell people to start with. Just do a few things. Grow tomatoes one year. A few things to start building the muscle memory that you can grow your own food and you can like at least supplement. Maybe it's 1% or 5% at the beginning of your diet or your family's needs with stuff you grow. Like in my family, we have 3 egg-laying hens right now, and with this avian bird flu, I think it's called. Organic free-range eggs are like $9 a dozen now. So like, that's something 100% of our eggs for the last few years have been grown in our backyard, and that's just like one thing. But we still go to the grocery store, every
Yeah.
other.
So,
Well, I
Anna,
always say, oh, sorry, I was just going
go
to
ahead.
interject quickly and just say, I always tell people to, do what you can where you are with what you got, right? And that's kind of the underlying tenet of homesteading anyway. Like as far as homesteading as a mindset, it's all about resourcefulness, using what you've got, making do or doing without, that sort of thing. And so no matter where you start, and we can talk about this as well, how we got started, because we started off in a city condo,
Yeah.
right? That's when we first discovered this idea of homesteading even, and we were able to start there. We were able to start in our kitchen. We had like a north facing balcony we could barely grow anything on. And we didn't know how to grow anything at that point anyway, but we were able to start by learning how to, cook from scratch, and again, sourcing things locally and preserving them, even though at that time it was literally just like freezing blueberries, whatever it was, right? So we started where we were at with what we had, and then made a plan, and we got out of the city eventually. We ended up on a rental with some land where they let us put a garden in. They had a big apple tree. That's when I learned to can, because I first started with applesauce. And then eventually we bought our own place, and now we're on a quarter acre because that's what we could afford.
Mhm.
And we're, on Vancouver Island, which is a very expensive part of the world.
Mhm.
Eventually, we have dreams to have more property, but we are making use of every square inch of this wall we can. And there's a ton you can do no matter where you live.
I want to get into the do what you can with what you have in a quick second, but I do want to go back to that point you made earlier about community and that James followed up on.
Hmm.
So, I think I've noticed that as well. We've moved 3 or 4 times just in the DC metro area. Just because the more kids we have, we need to have a bigger house. And so, one of the things we're always looking for is getting to know our neighbors. But when you're sort of talking to your community, in Vancouver, does that kind of come about organically to you, or is it more intentional where you say, hey, my family, we're really good at, growing
Eggs
tomatoes,
or whatever.
or my family does a lot of, hens, and so this family should do that. Is it more intentional that you guys have a community plan, or is it just sort of like, just kind of a free market of everybody kind of figures out what they need to be doing? I guess the question is, folks like us, how much intentionality should they have when they're trying to build their community to, really keep each other safe and protected?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's something that you should think about and that should be kind of in the background, but I don't like go to my neighbor necessarily and be like, "Hey, I've got this. What do you have? What could we trade?" Sometimes those things come up in conversation, right? Like where we live specifically, we're actually on a cul-de-sac, but then we back onto like a green belt, and we're actually rurally zoned. So we've kind of got like a bit of a foot in both worlds, like one in suburbia, one in like rural living.
Mhm.
But we're down at the end of a no through road, and we've talked to like, we have a pretty good relationship with our neighbors, and it's just come up naturally in conversation. Like, hey, if something really went, haywire, like, oh, what do you got? Okay, well, I have this. Well, this is how we could come together. So it has come up
Yeah.
just through conversations, but really it hasn't been intentional that like I go to my neighbor and talk about like,
Mm.
hey, how could we trade and barter, or what do you have? What do I have? It's just more, I think the intentionality comes from just the forming and maintaining of the relationship itself,
Yeah.
right? So making sure that you are being intentional about getting to know your neighbors, getting to know people in your community, because then that is how those conversations are going to naturally evolve. If you never speak to your neighbors, then you're never going to have a chance to have that conversation in the first place. And I think that nowadays, especially because of all the division and just
Mhm.
the way the world is, everybody's more isolated than ever. I think you have to have a bit of that intentionality sometimes about actually getting out there and getting to know people in your community, because it's very easy to just sit inside on your phone
Sure.
all the time. And the cool thing about that is I have formed an amazing community online and connected
Yeah.
with
Oh yeah.
other people online who are into homesteading, and that's how I ended up where I am with homestead living today. Like these are all online connections.
Mhm.
So there is that, but I think that it is important to actually get out there too. And so one of the things that we do here, is we get out to the farmers market when we can. Like I know I have lots of connections with other people that are, much bigger food producers locally than we are even, right? Like they're farming commercially,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And so having those connections too, it's just good because A, we want to support those local people in our community anyway. But B, again, if things do go sideways ever, like even when COVID happened, right?
Yeah.
Um, Knowing your farmers and, like having those connections can be really beneficial.
Imagine living in, Phil in the DC area, and Phil moves into your neighborhood, and he comes and knocks on your door. Hey, in case of the apocalypse, I've got tomatoes and bullets. What do you have? Like that's a little too intentional.
You think that's too intentional?
I would probably be like, "Oh my God, you are my people." This never happens, but but
Okay.
I'm a little bit more cautious because that's the other thing too is like because of the political division,
Yeah.
right? You kind of never know where someone's coming from or like what world they're living in nowadays too, right? And you
Yeah.
can sometimes come off as like either a crazy tinfoil hatter or you're, or I don't know. It like I think we're sometimes being fed so many different narratives, and I see this in my own community and the way a lot of people lean. I'm like, I have to sometimes be careful what I put out there, just because that's not necessarily everybody's view. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And I think that's where we need to start putting some of those things aside and just realize that at the end of the day, what we do have is each other, is our community, is our neighbors. And if something were really to go wrong, um, obviously we don't want anything really bad to happen, right? I hope nobody really wants anything horrible to happen, but sometimes I think like maybe it has to a little bit happen just to snap us out of this like
Yeah.
pettiness, like, because really like
Sure.
we're just so wrapped up in things that are just really don't matter at the end of the day. A lot of the times it's like just turn off social media and get
People
over
got to
it,
get shaken awake sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So, and I mean, I hope it's nothing horrible, but I think we need a bit of a slap across the face,
Okay.
so to speak, to like
Well,
snap us out of this stuff.
let's go into that. And this is probably something you have some thoughts on. I don't know about in Canada, but here in the U.S., MAHA, Make America Healthy Again,
Mhm.
has it's it's just like it's taken over the conversation of the country. Like,
Mhm.
my wife who never thought twice about preservatives in food or
Or like food coloring
food
stuff.
coloring or vaccines or any of that stuff. And, you know, now she at least asks the doctor, like, she'll give the kids the vaccines, but she'll ask them, do we have to give these all at the same time? Or, what is in the food or, things like the, dyes or whatever is in it. And 3 years ago, that is
Nobody
not
was asking that.
anything that she talked about. And she is as like normal suburban housewife as you can possibly get, but it is like part of her life now and how she feeds our kids. Is that
Mhm.
like? It seems to me like in with what you do, you've been kind of Maha for years now, right? Like,
We
is
were
it weird?
MAHA before it was cool. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
it's true. This is how it started. I know personally for me, for my husband and I, and I know from hearing from so many other people, this is how it started for them as well, was just this realization of like, whoa, what have we like literally and figuratively what have we been fed for all these years? What, like, we haven't even questioned it. And for us, we started watching like back 10, 15 years ago, whenever it was, when all those documentaries like Food Inc. and Farmageddon,
Yeah.
Yeah.
all those like food and health documentaries started coming out. That's when we started getting into it. We started really like just learning about like how our food is produced on an industrial scale. Just like the illnesses in society and how connected they are to things like big pharma and big ag and big food taking over everything. So, and that was really a big wake up call for me. And when I went, I don't want to be part of this system. I don't
Yeah.
want to be a victim of the system. And I also don't want to be contributing to this system as much as I can get away from it. And then through those documentaries, we also started hearing the term
Yeah.
homesteading come up. And that's when this light bulb went off that, like, hey, this is actually a solution to
Mhm.
some of these problems. This is something we can actually do on an individual scale, that can actually affect real change, and it's empowering. And so that's how we first got into it. And I think this MAHA movement is really a culmination of this. Like, there's a lot of people, and I'd say like there's like what I see online, like moms are driving this
Yeah.
MAHA thing because
What it takes.
a lot of them, they say too, like even if they never thought about what was in their food or what they're putting on or in their bodies or feeding to their families, all of a sudden you have kids and you care, right? Like all of a sudden you do read the ingredients and you do start like noticing, or you do start asking questions like, why do we need all these vaccines? And right. And so I think there's been an awareness for quite a while, and it's been building, and there's been a movement kind of brewing, and then now this is just the culmination of all of that. And there's kind of a leader that's gone in and has promised to fight on behalf of people, that this is something that's very near and dear to our heart. And I
Yeah.
have a lot of hope for what RFK is going to do. And I do want to preface just any political conversation we have here by saying that homesteading in and of itself is not political, and I think
Right.
it is for
Mhm.
everybody. And I know that there are people ranging from what I would say would be leaning toward the far left all the way to the far right, and there is a place for everybody in this movement. And I would say on my own behalf that I am somewhere that's pretty much right in the middle. Um, But as far as the MAHA movement and just the RFK thing, and again, it's politics. I try not to get my hopes up too high. I know that there's a lot of stonewalling that'll go on and a lot of, who knows how much change will actually be affected at the end of the day. But I think that it's just given people hope for the first time that, hey, maybe all of these individual changes that we have been making, all of these things that we've been doing on an individual level, and this movement that's been brewing, maybe it's finally amounted to enough to make some real change at a large scale. And I think, and again, I don't speak for everybody, but from what I see, this is very much in alignment with a lot of people in the modern homesteading movement.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I think that was well said, beautifully said. It's certainly in the popular conversation in American politics the way it never has been before. It's always been on the fringe of either left or right. It's sort of like a unification now of the left and right, where it's like, it's interesting. It's an interesting development. And, go back 15 years ago or whatever it was when Food Inc. came out, that kind of started it for a lot of people.
Well, it's sort of weird because you said that homesteading isn't a political thing. It's neither left nor right. In my like consciousness, when I think of somebody that cares about if their food is clean or where it comes from, or even growing it themselves, I have this meme in my head of some
Hippie commune.
just dirty hippie commie,
Yeah, exactly.
free love,
like the 70s back to the land movement.
Just really dirty barefoot hippies.
Yeah.
And now it's, like basically it's almost like a right wing thing now. Like
Yeah, it's
that
certainly new on the right.
Like I have
right
a lot of friends that they talk all the time about how they'd love to go back home wherever that's from and get a couple acres of land and grow their own food and be like a gentleman farmer. But it just kind of switched from being this weird thing that, like, honestly, I kind of dismissed it a little bit. I feel silly about that because it was, Food Inc. came out. I didn't really
what are these
get
hippies
it.
talking about
What are these
now?
hippies talking about? Turns out they were all kind of right because we were poisoning ourselves. And so, but like the thing you said about MAHA is it's 100% right. It's like one of the most, this is I'm not trying to use a pun here. It's one of the most organic grassroots things that have come about in my lifetime. Because there was no real political leader talking about homesteading and proto versions of MAHA for you, right?
Yeah, no, definitely not. This is, I'd say that certainly on a large scale, on a federal level, this is the first time I've heard a politician address some of the concerns that a lot of people have been voicing for a long time, but that they've either felt have landed on deaf ears or they've been dismissed as a conspiracy theorist or whatever the case may be. And finally, somebody is giving credence to that. And I think that it's just very like affirming for a lot of people that, like, see, we're not crazy. This stuff is happening, and there's finally somebody that's speaking, truth to these realities. But again, I think you're right. It has brought people together from the right and the left, and I think that's really cool. It's also really made people dig in on one side or another, and it's interesting. I just feel like so many things that we're living through right now are just, if you look at it from a spectator's point of view, it's just interesting from the human psychology and sociology level to watch it unfold. Like people that are really digging in and like really on behalf of big pharma, for example, like they're like, I'm gonna get all the vaccines now to counter. Like it's just interesting how people are so tribal about it, right?
Yeah. Did you, obviously you're in Canada, so like you have your own politics to watch, but did you watch any of the RFK nomination hearings up there?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I tried not to get too into it. I try not to like watch the news too much anymore because I can't. It honestly just gets under my skin, but I certainly keep on top of things and saw clips from it and had a pretty good idea of what was going on. But I honestly found it hard to watch some of them because of just, some of the hypocrisy and some of the people that were grilling him on certain things, or that they're taking money from these industries and everything. I had to kind of switch it off at some point, but I'm glad he was confirmed. I'm glad it was all like, I wasn't 100% sure there for a while.
All right.
Well, I was thinking we could move from the theoretical to the practical.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could tell us where do you, if you're coaching someone and you're really an educator at this point, like whether you view yourself that way or not, you really are educating, like through the the computer, through the interwebs, if you will. And where do you start? You're coaching somebody. What's the first skill set? Is it buy 4 egg-laying hens, roll the dice? Is it learn canning? What's the first thing you would tell someone to start with?
Yeah. So I think it depends. There's a lot of entryways into this lifestyle, and that's kind of the beauty of it. It's also the thing that you need to be cautious of because there's so many things that you can be doing
Yeah.
that it's very easy to try to take on too much too quickly, and then get, burnt out and throw in the towel on all of it, right? That's like the
We call
number
that
one
the game
reason.
approach. Get really hot. That's my name. Get really hot. Get really excited. Do everything all at once. Get frustrated. Fail. Go back. Get a
Burn
polio
out.
vaccine.
Well, so that's what you don't want to do. That's the number one thing I caution people against is trying to take on too much and then feeling overwhelmed and burnt out by all of it and then giving it up completely. So I would say whatever the skill is, just work on one thing at a time and get to a point where you feel pretty confident with that thing. So for a lot of people, sourdough bread is a really good entryway because, and we saw this during the pandemic when it really took off, because anybody can do it. You don't need any fancy equipment. You don't need any land. You can do this in your kitchen. All you need literally to start a sourdough starter is flour and water.
Yeah.
So that's a really popular entryway in that a lot of people, that's how a lot of people come to it because it's so accessible. If you have the land, start the garden, right?
Yeah.
Get the chickens. Like even if you only have a balcony, you can grow some things, right? You can grow some
Vertical
herbs. Even if
gardening.
you yeah, vertical garden. Like even if you're not starting something from seed, you can just go and buy, start by buying some seedlings at
Yeah.
the local garden center and start that way. And then you grow and evolve from there. For us, like I say, it started in the kitchen. It's really started with just cooking. And honestly, for a lot of people nowadays, just that is a good place to start because
You
so
mean just
many
cooking a fresh meal?
like a fresh meal from scratch, because so many
Wow.
people nowadays though, like they're not raised with that skill anymore, right? They order DoorDash and Uber Eats and go, and especially nowadays with the cost of food, I feel like I always say to my husband, like, I'm so glad we're good cooks and that
Mm,
we took an interest in this and really worked on this over the years because we can make pretty good food at home now and it's with good ingredients and everything else.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas I'm like, if you don't have that skill set and it's too expensive to eat out and all this stuff, then you're stuck eating, ramen noodles forever at home. So for
Yeah.
us, it was just that we just took an interest in cooking and then it evolved from there where again now then we started looking at well where are the ingredients coming from and sourcing
Mhm.
them better. And so again, even if you don't have land, find a local farmers market and learn what's in season in your area and maybe like I say if it's blueberries or strawberries or whatever it is that's in season, grab extra, right? Don't just buy enough to eat
Yeah.
fresh, like buy extra and then preserve them. All you have to do, a simple entryway there is literally put them in your freezer to last throughout the year.
Yeah.
Then learn to can, right? Like I say, my first canning project was applesauce, a pretty easy one. I was still, took me at least a few months of like really like being unsure of myself there. Took me years to be confident enough to try pressure canning, which is where you're actually canning like meats and vegetables and like real
mm.
subsistence type foods. Now I just invested in a freeze dryer. We
Now you're
dehydrated.
talking my language, Anna.
Yeah. So
Go
I mean,
to-
but this all comes like this is a decade of this,
Yeah.
right? So we didn't do all of this right off the bat. We started small, and then I remember the first preserving project I ever did. I learned that you could preserve fruits in alcohol, and so I was like, okay. So I
One
I
of
put
those
some
things is my favorite things.
well, but like not thinking about it, I think it was like apricots and I put them in some brandy and I put them in like my pantry, right? And like a couple months later I came back, I'm like, "Hey, they're not rotten. Wow, how cool it worked. They preserved them." And of course I went to eat one. I'm like, "Oh my God, this tastes like brandy. This is awful." Now the brandy tasted
Yeah.
pleasant. But
Wait, wait.
I'm like obviously if you think about it logically, like no, you're not going to survive off of apricots that are
Yeah.
preserved in brandy, right?
Challenge accepted,
But
Anna.
but
So I have
that's where I started, and I had to learn from there. They're like, okay, yes, technically you can preserve them that way, but that's not going to feed me or my family if I need to. And it just grows, and you make mistakes, and you learn, right?
Yeah.
I had never heard of that. So how long could an apricot be stored in brandy?
Indefinitely,
Well,
probably.
yeah, probably indefinitely as far as like would it kill you? But I mean, it would degrade and probably end up like mush. But
Yeah.
like alcohol's long been learned or used as a preservative and is used in a lot of herbal medicine and stuff too, right? If you're making tinctures and like that's another whole aspect of homesteading that
Yeah.
eventually a lot of people get into, or sometimes it starts there with herbs and natural medicine
Yeah.
and how to make your own medicine at home. So yeah.
All right. Tiffany on the computer says that fruit in alcohol will last 6 months.
Oh well, that's they always gotta like put a record. It's like those best
Yeah.
before dates,
I'm
right?
sure it's much longer than that,
Yeah, it
right?
probably just
Oh yeah.
degrades. It's like canned goods. They're like they give you a date, but that is just like for the best flavor, the best freshest. Like it slowly
Yeah.
has a half life that degrades. I'm
One of the
guessing.
things you hear a lot about with canned foods, like canned meat or canned fruits, is botulism.
Mm.
You sort of like skipped over that a little bit. How actually scared were you to do that canning process, put it aside for a bit, and then eat it, and then trust yourself enough that you had done the canning process correctly, that you wouldn't poison yourself?
It's funny. Honestly, I was terrified at first. Well, first of all, I think the first thing I pressure can. So to give a quick rundown, so there's two main types of canning, which is water bath canning and pressure canning. Now there's like steam canning has come out as well, but I, I don't have a lot of experience in that, so I won't speak to that. But your basic two types of legitimate safe canning techniques are to can in a water bath, like a boiling water bath, or
Hmm.
pressure can something. So pretty much all fruits, like jams, jellies, pickles, things like that, they can be water bath canned because they have a high acidity level.
Right.
Anything that is over, I think it's four, oh, I can't remember off the top of my head now. I should know this. 4.6, I want to say, on the pH scale, is considered non-acidic and must be pressure canned.
Oh.
Now I need to know this. I don't want to give the wrong information. What pH needs? I'm just gonna look this up quickly. Be pressure canned. And so, but those are, yeah, 4.6. Oh, good. I was right. So anything, and now, of course, how do you know that? Well, in general, those are things like meats, vegetables that are not pickled, so not acidified with things like vinegar, that sort of thing. They
Okay.
must be pressure canned in order to be safe to eat because you need to be able to reach the high temperatures of a pressure canner in order to kill all possible bacteria.
Right.
Because botulism spores can
Hmm.
produce a toxin under the right conditions, and the right conditions for botulism to grow is in a room temperature, non-acidic anaerobic environment. So anaerobic meaning no oxygen. So basically the perfect conditions that are inside a canning jar.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you need to be able to heat those non-acidic foods to high enough temperatures to kill off the spores. Now, there's still people in the canning world that'll say, well, my great grandparents, canned green beans or canned meat in a water bath canner and we're all fine. But for me, like, it's not worth the risk.
Yeah.
If I can just pressure can it and make sure it's safe. So, to answer your question, the first time I canned something, I was terrified. I hid around the corner in case it blew up on me. And then I like threw out all of the green beans I can just in case. I did it right. I'm sure I did, but I just, it's your first time. And that's often the experience of a lot of people, or it's the thing that is so intimidating to them. That's why they don't start. But once I got used to it, did it a few times, and then it worked up the courage to try. I canned some pumpkin one time, and then I ate it. I think I turned it into some pumpkin pie. I don't remember what I did with it. And then I spent like the next 5 hours on Google looking up like possible botulism symptoms. You start to feel like, I think I'm losing vision. Oh, am I starting to feel, right? And I was but then that's what I dove in and learned a ton about it because it was consuming me at that time. And that's where I actually gained the confidence to know that I was doing it correctly and I didn't die. And now I'm like, don't even think about it. As long as you're following a tested recipe and you're not cutting corners,
Yeah.
like for example, water bath canning something that should be pressure canned or cutting the time in half because you're impatient or whatever it is, you'll be fine. Canning is very safe and tested.
So how long would that meat last on your shelf if it was canned properly?
Canned properly, like I think that again, the kind of general rules, like the best before, as they say, it lasts up to a year. But I've certainly had like up to 2 years. What beyond that, like it's still safe technically, but past 2 years, I would maybe consider, I don't know, is this worth eat? If I haven't eaten it in 2 years anyway, like, am I gonna want to eat it
Mm,
anyway?
yeah.
So I usually use within a couple years, roughly. But again, just like store-bought stuff too, we have to remember this it doesn't all of a sudden go bad the day, you hit the 1 year or 2 year mark, right? Like have to have some common sense about you as well. And, yeah. So anyway, I say within a couple years, and I do believe in actually using and eating the food that you're preserving
Yeah.
and not just saving it for a potential apocalypse, but we can talk about that later or now, whatever.
Well, let's dig into the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Let's
Since you
see.
brought it up.
Since you brought it up and seemingly want to talk about nothing except that, so like, you know what? I kind of think that for a certain segment of the population, like the word prepping has kind of become like a word that's safe to use instead of homesteading. They're very similar in some ways, but what would you say are the differences between homesteading and somebody who's
Like doomsday prepping? Is that what you mean by
I
it?
wouldn't call it doom. I mean, doomsday is like nuclear bomb goes off. I'm talking like um, water main breaks in your neighborhood, or there's a massive snowstorm, or like I grew up in Florida, and growing up, it wasn't uncommon for power to hurricane, and it wasn't uncommon for the power to go out for like 3 weeks,
Jeez.
and so you have to use your generator. So, what would you say are sort of the kind of similarities and differences between what you would call a prepper and what you would call a homesteader? Because to me, I think they're philosophically trying to get at the same place.
Hmm. Yeah, you know what? I believe that every homesteader is a prepper just by nature of what we're doing, but not every prepper is a homesteader. I think that's where the main difference is. You can get somebody who's, you know, bought all the fancy gear and, it's
Bill.
all like what are they like beans, bullets, and band-aids and, has
Bill.
the stores of food put like that, that expensive emergency food put away and but that doesn't know how to plant a seed or grow a garden or bake a loaf of bread or right? And so,
You're describing Phil versus me. I'm a host. Phil is a prepper.
Well, my wife gardens.
That's true.
All right.
I'm kidding. But yeah. Okay, so every homesteader is a prepper. Not every prepper is a homesteader.
Yeah,
yeah, and
four
I mean, again, I'm not
tomato plants. I don't know about if you're a homesteader.
not every homesteader though is like a self-proclaimed prepper, and I think
No.
sometimes it's actually, there's a bit of a negative connotation to the word prepper, right? Because we
Yeah.
do have this image of like the guy with the tinfoil hat that's hiding out in the basement with his loaded gun, and right,
Oh,
waiting for a nuclear bomb to hit or whatever, right? But and so sometimes I think there's an aversion to have that association, or people that are
Yeah.
homesteaders will preface topics about preparedness by saying, I just want to start by saying I'm not a prepper because they don't want to give that impression.
Yeah.
But I
mhm.
think that just by nature of the way we live, because we're growing a garden, we're being self-sufficient, we're producing some of our own food, we're, learning to preserve it, and we're just being less dependent on the system, quote unquote, in general, that just naturally makes us more prepared, whether that's the goal or not, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the common thread I think is resilience. You're building resilience or muscle memory. You're learning a can. You don't have to can right now. You can get canned goods at your grocery store.
Hmm.
But a byproduct of canning, besides like learning the science of it, the fun and preserving your own food, is you're building that resiliency in case you can't just run down and get peaches or
Yeah.
Yeah.
apricots or whatever.
Yeah, my wife planted her first. She had been gardening a little bit her entire life, but she planted her first major garden last year, and just what she has learned from that experience has totally changed what she's going to plant this year. Like this year, there's no broccoli and there's no Brussels sprouts because those things are a pain in the butt
Yeah.
to keep alive. So it's going to be, when we put up our new beds this year, it'll be totally different, and we're
Yeah.
going to learn a whole bunch more of things we can garden
Yeah.
this year.
Been a lot of trial and error with
Yeah.
my own garden and how limited I am, and sort of like how the sun goes throughout my yard with these massive oak trees. It's like, well, I had a lot of high hopes for a lot of awesome lettuces and vegetables that just didn't pan out. Plus, it gets insanely hot here in the summer, and like lettuces just don't last that long. But tomatoes grow really well, and peppers and cucumbers grow really well here.
One thing we were talking about with you before we went live on air might be the most important thing we talk about today, and it's something James was mentioning earlier. Let's just say America invades Canada because we're just tired of it. We get tired of it.
Yeah,
We
we're
wake up
tired
on a
of it.
Monday and we're pissed, and we invade. What? First off, do you welcome your new overlords? And if, and if you don't, like, what are you doing?
Oh man,
What are you
it's
going to do about it, Anna?
what am I gonna do with it? Probably nothing. Like, no. Okay, it's funny because, like I said, this has come up. Like, this is real conversations that
You
people are
sure?
having right now, and
Is this
I
comes up with
Do
your
you
can't.
friends?
think this might actually happen?
Um, you know, I don't know. Like,
Oh God.
quite honestly, like, okay, I don't believe that America is gonna come in boots on the ground, like aggressive takeover. I don't think I don't foresee that happening. But if I'm being super realistic, we are in a very interesting place in time and history and geopolitics and everything and there, I couldn't see and not just that, but with technology. I was just listening to the news this morning because I think it's still important to kind of see what's being said and what's going
Mhm.
on in the world. And they were talking about, resources and critical minerals that we need for a lot of the technologies that are really growing. And of course, we've got, the rest of the world that has not necessarily been, part of the first world, all for the past few decades, now having their kind of comeuppance, and they're going to want access to all these things as well. So we need access to more resources, and Canada has some of that. So
Hmm.
I can't say for sure what the end goal would be if the US wanted to take over Canada, but I have an idea of what they might be after. And could there be mutual benefit there? Maybe. As a Canadian, I'm a proud Canadian. I'm a proud to be, part of a sovereign Canada, and I would like to remain that way, quite honestly. However, um, I also work for an American company. Homestead Living is based out of the States. I'm actually the only Canadian on the team. I love my American friends, my American neighbors. I have a great relationship with the people down there. We've even considered moving there ourselves before, my husband and I, simply because, I mean, there's a lot of issues going on with our own politics up in Canada right now. I mean, our taxes are crazy; they're through the
Yeah.
roof. Like there would be benefits there that way as well. Um,
And your prime minister loves going in
He
blackface.
really likes dressing up like
like,
people that are not white. I don't get it.
yeah, I mean, yeah, there's been a lot of issues obviously over the past few years, and with COVID and everything that happened. I don't know
Yeah.
if you guys followed the Freedom Convoy that happened back in
Oh yes.
Yeah.
2022 and the right?
Oh yeah.
Like that's when I had a really big wake up moment. And so there's kind of two sides to this whole rhetoric coming from Trump and from the states right now about, like, oh, the 51st state and tariffs and all this stuff that's coming down. There's a lot of people that are really feeling patriotic right now and like have their Canadian flags waving, and I support that. Like, I really do.
Hmm.
But I also am like, it shouldn't take this for us to feel patriotic. And the Canadian flag and being patriotic up here was kind of run through the mud, quite honestly, a couple years ago.
Yeah, it wasn't
When
okay to be patriotic or to love your own country, and it seems like you guys have it's just something.
See,
I know
Trump is
what's happened.
so
Yeah.
amazing that he can even make Canadians proud of their own flag.
But a lot of us have been being patriotic this whole time. Like there's
Yeah.
this big push right now to like support Canadian and buy local and
Yeah.
fly your flag. And like I've had people in my own family be like, are you buying Canadian right now? And I'm like, I've been buying Canadian this whole time. Like, not
I'm
that I
born
only
in
buy Canadian, but like
Canada.
I've been preaching
Yeah.
buy local, support local for years now. And now, because it's a mainstream movement, I feel like it's like being pushed down everybody's throats. But like we should have always been doing this. And again, I am patriotic and I'm happy to fly the Canadian flag. And honestly, I want to remain a sovereign nation.
Yeah. Sure.
But again, there's a lot of mixed feelings about that right now because people that have been doing that over the last few years have been called all sorts of terrible things.
Yes.
Mhm.
And there's been Canadians saying that they're ashamed to fly the Canadian flag
Uh,
because of association with certain people, and so it's just, yeah, it's brought out a lot of mixed feelings on where we stand right now. So as far as if we get invaded by the states, what am I going to do? I mean, probably nothing. This is what I said to a family member who said, "Well, what are you going to do if Donald Trump invades?" And I said, "Nothing." She goes, "Oh, so you're just going to let him? You're just going to let him?" I'm like, "Well, what am I going to do personally?" Honestly, what I'm going to do is the same thing that I do now is I'm going to keep doing my homesteading thing and I'm going to keep growing my food and being as self-sufficient as possible so that hopefully I don't have, I can distance myself as much as possible from any type of situations like that might happen and support my local community and my family and the people I love.
Yeah. Canadians here in America have always had the best reputation as just being like nice, kind people. And actually, it's funny you bring up the truck convoy. This is just my impression. Maybe James has a different one. But when your truckers were doing that, I think, at least personally, I was kind of inspired by it because I think Americans were kind of down on how to respond to COVID.
Yeah.
We felt like we were just being bullied and we really hadn't had a need to really politically kind of fight back at
And
that
the Canadians
scale.
had it way worse.
And
than
the Canadians had it way worse, but you guys like picked yourself up from your bootstraps and like you took it at them. And
then your government closed down their access to the banking system,
banking and everything
which is
else, but
terrifying that could be done.
from my perspective, it was kind of inspiring actually to watch you guys do that. Like it's not something I would have expected.
Yeah, it was. And a lot of people again who were there or who were a part of it, or like even for me, like I was just watching it online, but that's when I had a really big personally like a really big wake up call with what was going on with the media and everything, because I was watching two complete different stories unfold,
Oh,
right? I was watching it from the ground level, from people who were just filming it on their cameras and hearing stories of people who were actually there, and then listening to how it was being spun and spoken about on the news. And then, yeah, of course, then watching afterwards, people that were involved have their bank accounts frozen and everything else. It was like, holy, like, what is going on here? But it was inspiring. And people that were a part of it, again, this is where we live in these two different worlds with different narratives now. People that were a part of it are like, that is the most patriotic thing that ever happened in this country, right? It was the most proud so many of us had ever been. But then there are other people who are like, that's what tainted Canada for me. And
Yeah.
right. And so it's just, again, it's why I try right now to distance myself a little bit from everything going on, because I don't fully agree with what anybody or any politician or any side of anything is doing right now. I take it all, try to think about it critically and take it with a grain of salt. But, I just, like I say to my husband all the time, what a time to be alive. It's really interesting to watch it all.
Probably healthy not to pay too much attention. Well, if you ever want to become an American citizen, I don't know if you saw Trump's press conference lately, but for $5 million, you can purchase what he's calling the gold
I heard
card.
this.
Instead of a green card, it's the gold card. It's going to cost you $5 million, and you can become an American citizen. So, start saving up
Yeah.
those pennies.
Are you, Phil? Are you a full citizen? Are you?
No, just American citizen.
So okay.
Yeah, they cannot take me back.
They won't take you back.
They don't want me.
I will.
Especially after this conversation. Anna, why don't you tell us where we can find your work, where people can find your socials and everything else?
Yeah.
Personal
Yeah, for
phone
sure.
number, address, that kind of stuff.
So I actually run my own blog, which this is how I first started online in the homesteading community years ago, and that evolved into Modern Homesteading magazine, which now I'm working with Homestead Living. But so my personal blog is called The House and Homestead. So thehouseandhomestead.com. So that's where you can find me. All of my recipes and gardening tips and like free resources are on there. As well as, I've got a couple of paid courses, a gardening course, a canning course, a membership program, that sort of thing, a preparedness course. And then with Homestead Living, so I'm the editor-in-chief of Homestead Living magazine.
Right.
So we're just in our second year of print right now. But again, this homesteading movement is growing in momentum all the time. I think as more people are feeling disconnected and the world is feeling more uncertain, more and more people are coming to this movement. And funnily enough, the homesteading movement loves a tangible thing that you can hold in your hand. So while all these other print magazines are dying and going online, we're doing the exact opposite. There's a huge demand for like tangible things that you can hold in your hand, resources that you can keep on your shelf. And that's what Homestead Living magazine is all about. And we also have a books department. We've just started publishing books. So we've got a freeze drying book and a sourdough book and a preserving book. And we've got herbal medicine, a book on herbal medicine coming out, and cheese making and all sorts of good stuff. So you can find all of that at homesteadliving.com. And then we're also just started up with Homestead Living. I'm hosting a monthly live show called The Coop, where I basically interview whoever we've featured on our cover that month, and we talk about whatever their area of expertise is. So again, we've spoken with people who are experts on cheese making, on people who've turned their, land that was deemed unsuitable for agriculture into a thriving homestead. The next one we have is with an herbalist talking all about how to use herbs as medicine and grow your own and all that sort of thing. And then we've got lots of other good stuff coming up too. So you can check that out at homesteadliving.com/thecoop if you're interested in joining the next one.
That is so cool. Anna, we are blessed by you. Thank you for coming on here. Wow. Thank you so much. This is endless resources on your personal blog and homesteadliving.com. This is really cool. This is right up our alley. So thank you
Yeah,
so
for
much.
sure.
Yeah.
I'll mention one more too, just quickly on my own blog. So you can find all the blog posts and everything. But if you're looking for like a good, just introduction to homesteading and no matter where you live and kind of how to get started, I actually have a free ebook that you can grab called Homestead Wherever You Are. So you can get that. Let me just double check the link and make sure that I've got it right. I think it's Homestead Anywhere. But you can grab that, and I basically go over, what you can do no matter where you live. If you're, in an apartment at an apartment level, what you can do. If you got a little bit more land, if you're in the suburbs, what you can do. There's recipes included, all that sort of thing. So yeah, it's thehouseandhomestead.com/homestead-anywhere.
Oh yeah, I see it here. I'm on my phone right now. Very cool.
Anna, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much to Anna Sakawsky, future American citizen.
We shall see.
For your time and all your expertise. It was a real pleasure.
Thanks so much, guys.